This is 3 True Horror Stories animated. 3. The Hatching Plan. It was a stormy night in Wisconsin in 1997 when a boy named Ben and his friend Thomas were playing at a local park. It had just rained and lightning cracked above them. They sat on a nearby slide and watched the water swirl around in the drains. When the light from a flash revealed something shocking, they ran away screaming. What had they seen? Another boy, about their age, was sitting inside the storm drain with a look of pure evil on his face. Ben and Thomas didn't want to be too nosy, so they didn't stick around to ask him any questions. But they did run home and tell their parents what they'd seen. But their parents thought it was just 2 boys being silly and didn't take them seriously. So they went back to the slide the next day to try and find the mysterious boy, but he was gone. And although they searched for hours, they never found him. However, that wasn't the last time they saw him. Whenever they looked in storm drains, they could see the same boy grinning back at them, always seeming to be on the other side. He would stare at them with wide eyes while they stared back in horror. One day, Ben decided to investigate further. He threw a small rock into a drain and then waited. The rock came out the other end, and Ben smiled. He had an idea. If he could figure out where the pipe led, maybe he could put an end to this mystery once and for all. With the help of his father, Ben discovered where the pipe led. It emptied out into a large manhole. Ben figured that if he crawled through the pipe himself, he could confront the boy once and for all. His father helped him locate the starting point of the pipe. It was a manhole near their school. So after school one day, Ben snuck into the manhole and started crawling through the pipe. It was dirty and narrow, but he managed. Finally, he emerged out of another manhole near his house and collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. But when he turned to go back, he realized he couldn't remember which way he'd come from. He was lost in a maze of identical tunnels. And as he made his way through, the air grew colder and colder until finally he heard a voice. Looking for something? Ben whipped around and saw the boy from the drain standing right in front of him. And behind him were 2 other boys who looked just as scary. "We've been expecting you," said one of the boys. Ben started to panic, but the boy held up a hand. "Easy, we won't hurt you." "But there's someone else we want to show you!" Ben was led down a long tunnel and around sharp corners, until finally they stopped outside another manhole. "Here we go," said the boy. And with that, they jumped into the opening and disappeared. Ben watched them go and then started to scream. He clambered to his feet and started running for home. He burst through the door and fell onto the floor sobbing. His mother rushed over and asked what had happened, but Ben couldn't speak. All he could do was shake and point outside. His mother followed his gaze and saw 3 boys climbing out of a manhole in the street. She took Ben's hand and went to the window. She saw the boys disappear down an alleyway. She looked back at her son and asked him if he wanted to go and find the boys. But Ben shook his head so hard that his mother could feel his fear through his tiny body. Ben looked back at the window and knew in his heart that those boys were no longer human. His mother looked at her son and knew that whatever those boys were, they had taken something from him. To the lake house? A young couple named John and Lucy were looking for a cheap house when they saw a beautiful cottage near a lake. Even though it was far from the city, they decided to buy it. They moved right in and settled down. And for the first few days, everything was fine. But then strange things started happening. At first, it was just little things, like hearing footsteps when they were alone in the house, or seeing objects move from one room to another overnight. Then things escalated. One night, John woke up in the middle of the night and heard a knock on the bedroom door. He told Lucy to ignore it, but then it happened again. He got out of bed and slowly approached the door. Every time he took a step, the knocking got louder. When he finally reached the door and opened it, nothing was there. As the days passed, the knocks became more frequent. Soon, John and Lucy were too scared to even sleep in their own home. They packed up and fled. When they told their story to the police, they learned that the previous owner of the home had been driven insane by the constant knocking. She had torn down a wall in her bedroom to reveal a hidden passageway, hoping that it would lead her to the source of the noise, but instead, she had found a dusty old diary. The last entry read, "The knocking is driving me insane. I can't take it anymore. I must find the source of the knocking, even if it's the last thing I ever do." And that was the last entry. The police also told them that after that, the woman had ripped out her own wall and then had vanished without a trace. John and Lucy never returned to the house. Years later, however, a new couple bought it. They fixed up the walls and made it their own. But soon, they, too, started hearing the knocking. The tunnel? Sarah was working late in the office when she heard a sudden crash. She looked around and saw that no one else was there. Then she heard the sound again. This time, it came from outside. Sarah grabbed her coat and headed out into the rain. As she walked, she heard a loud bang and gasped when she saw a man lying on the ground. He was soaked in blood and barely breathing. "Help me," he croaked. "There's a monster in the tunnel." Sarah felt a chill down her spine. She knew that behind their office building was a tunnel used for transporting goods, but she'd never heard of anyone going there at night. Still, she couldn't leave the man alone, so she took out her phone and called an ambulance before disappearing into the darkness. The tunnel was dark and dank, but Sarah finally found the source of the bleeding. The man had been hit by something heavy, probably part of a delivery. But when Sarah went to check on him, she saw something that made her scream. His face had been completely ripped off. Sarah didn't know how long she stayed in the tunnel, but eventually the police arrived and she left. A few days later, she was watching the news when she saw a report about the incident. The police had still had no idea what had attacked the man, and neither did she. But when she looked at the picture on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. The dead man's face had been completely ripped off, except for one ear. And when she touched her face, Sarah realized she had a small cut on her cheek, a souvenir from the attack. That's because she had brushed up against the man's ear when she tried to help him. She now had proof that what she'd seen wasn't of this world. And she was lucky to be alive. Now watch real, scary stories, or click this other video instead.